At the Shen family's courtyard, few days after the incident at Pavilion of Spirit Dan, the protagonist is seen watering the herbs. It was from the seedlings he brought. Using the dragon slaver technique taught by Su Meo, grew the fruits and ripen within 3 days. Su Meo, accepting the protagonist appreciation, described the dragon slaver as the essence between heaven and earth and which contained incomparable majestic vitality, while condensing the slaver and directing it towards the herb plants, Su Meo saying that the protagonist dragon slaver being too weak only affect the miscellaneous herbs, but in the future when his cultivation becomes pure and solid, even the millennium spiritual trees could be greatly accelerated. The protagonist in amazement watched the herbs and agreed that Su Meo's dragon slaver was more effective and he needed to practice more. Su Meo, teasing the protagonist, by lifting his chin with her finger, asked if he wanted her to help him improve breathing technique, gleefully adding if the protagonist pleaded, she could also teach him mouth to mouth. The protagonist nervously questioned if it wasn't a little inappropriate. Tensing up the scene, creating an awkward situation, Su Meo quickly responded that she was only teasing, asking why he was taking it seriously, calling him little brat. Inside the room, both the sisters were enjoying their meal, and the protagonist alongside them, humming that he could now finally try alchemy. The protagonist, with feigning ignorance, asked whether large food was needed to make alchemy. Su Meo, quick to respond, affirmed, as they had no idea how long it would take, arguing if the protagonist wanted to starve them to death. Bai Yu, in excitement, also seemed to enjoy mentioning she didn't even remember how long it had been ever since she ate food from the mortal world. The protagonist, while holding a small cauldron in his hand, wondered how long it would take to make these pills, then suddenly felt and thought to try, using his divine sense. The protagonist then found himself inside a strange space, with golden circles and light, confused as to where he was. A strange beast-like bird with tail of fox, head of an eagle flew towards the protagonist. Shocked, the protagonist wondered what the creature was. Su Meo appeared from a door-like shape out of nowhere, peeped, and while holding foods in her hand, congratulated the protagonist at his talent, mentioning that it was a divine realm, surprising him. She also mentioned that this was her master unique Tao of alchemy, to create a special realm using divine sense. Su Meo added, while the protagonist was here, his true chi of fire will greatly be improved and his alchemy refinement will be 10 times more effective in comparison to outside. And at the sight of beast remarked that the beast was transformed by the fire of his own true chi known as Bai Fong, and learning the refinement technique meant passing its first trial, enabling the protagonist to make mortal level pills, and the trial vary according to individuals and it was up to the protagonist to figure out himself. Su Meo, asking the protagonist to think about it himself, fled. The protagonist then jumped at the direction of Flame Bird, building confidence of whatever the test may be about. The Flame Bird gathered its chi energy in the form of fireball inside its mouth and hurled it towards the protagonist. The protagonist, startled, asked if the fight had started, and without a moment to spare was hit by the fireball. The protagonist began the counterattack, spewing his chi in his hand in the form of fireball, assuring himself that he couldn't go wrong using his chi power, launching it towards the fire bird. The bird also threw the fireball towards the protagonist. The balls of fire clashed, and after the explosion, as the fire vanished on sight, the bird seemed defeated, the protagonist claiming that he was right, as the trial was to condense his true chi fire at the right time and offset the bird's attack. The fire bird folded its wings, with immense aura around it, and then within seconds it spread its wings and split into 3 chickens, like birds. The protagonist, wondering why it had split into 3, at the same time facing a barrage of attacks from all 3 birds, assuring his own self that it was just a number, prepared for the attacks. Then a large ball of fire lunged toward the protagonist, which scared him, making him flee and turn his back around, but was hit. The protagonist, angered, then thinking of a way to deal with the birds, thought that the difference in size of the bird might represent difference in firepower, which would require him to use different level of purity of true qi, just like the alchemy, where the heat needs to be constantly adjusted, concluding that he would first deal with the smallest one. The protagonist then called out to the birds to attack while aiming his attack at the smallest bird. The plan of attack didn't go according to the plan. The bird was fast, and within a blink of an eye, it flew away, confusing the protagonist. The bird was already behind the protagonist, and with an attack, sent the protagonist crashing forward. The protagonist then stared above, wherein the three birds were hovering in circles, creating a circle formation of flame tornado, engulfing the protagonist. The protagonist in pain recollected that the frequency of speed and attack have become several times faster. It was necessary to distinguish the size of firepower while at the same time avoiding it and also quickly counterattacking. The protagonist then, with swift movement, ran towards one of the birds, holding his chi in his hand, and threw towards the bird, making a large sound, and even throwing back the protagonist with the force of the impact, the protagonist, recomposing himself, as he had underestimated them, called out again for attack, as the blazing fire surrounded him. The day of patriarch selection of the Shen family finally arrived. At the Shen villa in the courtyard stood two figures facing each other, and there was also a gathering of huge crowd to witness the fight for succession. Shen Hao Hai, an 8th level of mortal martial realm and the commander of Shen family branch, who was also the father of Shen Jinhua, stood and reprimanding Shen Tainhu, the protagonist father, unaware that the protagonist had gained spiritual veins, laid down the rules for backups to have good cultivation to compete for patriarch position, viewing him as not being worthy of the competition. The protagonist's father, with calm demeanor, stated that the entire city of Wohu knows that his son had potential to make variety of pills, defending his son, asking whether the elders of Shen family agree. Shen Han Hai, a 7th level of mortal martial realm and Shen Hao's brother in carefree attitude, pointed out that the protagonist had gotten into trouble with the spirit pill pavilion master, and so no alchemist would teach him, and everyone knew that in alchemy without a master it was impossible to make a single pill. Suddenly the protagonist, flying from above into the stage, saying who had said that he couldn't be an alchemist, swiftly landing on the stage with standing in front of his father, proclaimed that though he may not be talented, he could make pills without a master. Shen Han Hai, in a mocking manner, asked the protagonist if he had his brain fried, as it takes at least a year to learn alchemy, and he had just learned to master his true qi only a few days ago.